Good morning. I felt inspired to hop on really early today because I had a realization this morning when I was in a moment where I was feeling a lot of worry and some anxiety. I've been researching and learning about investing in a lot of different realms, and I decided that yesterday or today was like the day that I wanted to make this investment that I've been wanting to make. It's just like a tiny little step into learning about this. And I realized this morning when I woke up that I was feeling a lot of worry about it. Like, oh my goodness, like what if I buy it right now and then the thing goes up, or what if the thing goes down and then I don't realize. And I started to just pay attention to that and track that and watch that inside of me. And it was so fascinating to see that, because as I was watching myself, I noticed that in that worry, my body essentially was completely reflecting all of what that worry was. So I was bracing everything. Like I was bracing my body essentially for the worst possible outcome, which, I mean, in this case, it's so funny when we look at like what is the worst possible outcome of something. We're so terrified of so many things that are really just not that big of a deal. Hey, Steph, thanks for jumping on. We're just so terrified of so many things that are just not a big deal. Like for me, it was essentially this thing of like, oh, like what if I don't get it at the exact price that's like the lowest possible price that I could buy this thing at, right? And I started to notice that my jaw was tight. I was literally not breathing. Like there was hardly any breath coming in or going out. And my whole body was like in this process of like contracting and bracing, like for the worst possible outcome. And so I started to reflect on this, and I was like, well, that's interesting. Like if I'm bracing for the worst possible outcome, I'm essentially like sending the frequency, the message into my field and into my space, into my body, my entire field, the energetic field, right? I'm sending the message that worst possible thing is going to happen, and that I am really fragile and I can't handle that worst possible outcome. And so it's essentially like I'm creating that happening. And so that just started like this whole spiral for me of unraveling this thing that has happened for me for a long time. And what I realized is that I've studied the nervous system a lot in the tradition. Sorry, my alarm was going off. I have a breathwork class here in a couple minutes. The nervous system. I've been studying that in somatics for a really long time, and essentially the idea in somatics and in like somatic sex education and a lot of these traditions that I've been studying is that when you feel worry or anxiety, what you need to do about that is to retrain your nervous system to go from the sympathetic nervous system, which is the activated or active nervous system, into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the digest and rest and digest, essentially. And what I realized is that there's a big fallacy and a huge piece missing in this whole tradition of how people teach the nervous system, and what practices are helpful. Hey, Elizabeth, thanks for hopping on. What practices are helpful to kind of get over worry or anxiety, right? And so what most of these traditions teach is that you need to learn practices to calm your nervous system. So you do yin yoga, you do restorative yoga, you do very slow, long, deep breathing practices, you do, you take a nap. And I just all of a sudden, like the pieces just came together in myself this morning as I was noticing this in my own body, that a huge piece that's missing from that is that when we are just going to that side and training our nervous system to go, like, whenever we get into the worry or the anxiety or, that bracing feeling, like, if all we're doing is moving then from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system and calming ourselves, we're creating this, and even more realizations are happening as I'm talking about this. We're creating the neurological pathway that when I am worried about something and that something seems too big for me, then what I should do is I should calm myself down, come into a state of rest, and be there. That's essentially reinforcing this concept that I am too fragile to actually confront, and maybe confront is not it's not very precise language. Let's just say that I'm not able to handle whatever this challenge is that's in front of me. It's essentially reinforcing that neurological pattern that I am fragile and I cannot handle whatever this challenge is that's being put in front of me. If every time that starts to come up in me, I just go into my parasympathetic nervous system. And I realized that what I've been experiencing over the last couple of months is that taking risks is actually an incredible way to fortify your nervous system, because every time you take a risk is when you feel worried about something, when you have anxiety about something, when you're afraid of doing something, rather than backing off from it and like going into a rest place, what happens is when you actually look at it and you say, okay, this is terrifying. This is a huge challenge. I've never been able in the past to, deal with the financial system, for example, or I've never in the past, invested. And you look at that and you stay in your axis and you say, yeah, I'm going to do this. I can do this. I am going to do this. And you take that terrifying action. What you're doing is you're fortifying your nervous system. We have this fallacy, and in the well-being community right now, it's like there's like this concept that the sympathetic nervous system is bad and that we shouldn't be in our sympathetic nervous system, because a lot of people, when they're in their sympathetic nervous system, what has been happening for a long time, and I totally bought into this too, because what most people, when they're in their sympathetic nervous system, they're in the fight, flight, or freeze, which means that they're wreaking absolute havoc on their entire body when you're living in fight, flight, or freeze all the time. However, the sympathetic nervous system is not only about fight, flight, or freeze. You can be active, you can take risks being in your sympathetic nervous system without coming from a place of terror. You can look at a risk and say, yeah, I'm going to take that on because I know I'm not fragile and I am able to do this. And every single time that you take one of those risks, it's like reinforcing within yourself your capacity and how powerful and how strong you are. And so give it a try. Make it an experiment. The next time that you feel worried about something, reflect on how that's showing up in your body first. Like for me, that was a really potent realization that, my breath pretty much completely restricted, and just feeling this thing of like my whole body like bracing for the worst, right? It's like if somebody is about to hit you, or you think somebody's about to hit you, or like you look at a dog, right? When a dog thinks that somebody's going to hit them, like they do this because they're anticipating the worst and they're trying to like brace themselves to protect themselves from whatever it is that's going to be hitting them. Whereas if I'm taking full deep breaths and I'm relaxed I am able to respond to a situation. I'm able to respond to a challenge in a fluid way that is not protective, but that is responsive. Oh, that's a fantastic way to put it. That just made a couple more things click for me. Rather than it being protective, it's responsive, because I know that I can experience whatever experience might come through on the planet, any experience that might come through. I know that I am calling in and attracting and activating the codes for the people and the things that will then be the people and the codes and the things that I need to engage with in my process. And so rather than bracing from that, because I think I don't want to experience that and I want to like push it away because I don't think I'm strong enough to experience that, actually like being in my axis and knowing that I am fully capable to respond and engage with any situation that could potentially arise in my life. So play with it. Let me know how it goes and have fun with it. Take care. Have a beautiful Saturday.